It sounds like you never really you wanted to self-publish from the beginning, but did you have you thought it ever about traditional publishing? Did you consider that, like, or were you always just kind of like, I want to self-publish and that's the way I want to go?
It's a good question. I've been back and forth the whole time.
Hmm.
I had very interesting experiences trying to get myself published because I thought, you know, traditional publishing was the route to go initially, and I think that I wanted that kind of external validation of, yeah, this writing is good enough, which to a point, it is part of the threshold, right, to get
Hmm.
traditionally published, is you need a certain quality of writing. And so I did submit, I think, three different books to traditional publishers, well, actually to agents.
Hmm.
And so a number of times I had submitted fantasy books. And the last go around, I submitted a fully written magical realism fantasy book about a street magician, busker, who loses
Hmm.
his body in the 1700s, 1800s London, and has to get it back, and finds himself in the middle of a plot to assassinate the queen. And
Hmm.
so that garnished a lot of responses very quickly, um, because the premise was interesting,
Hmm.
but all of them were rejections. I actually got
Yeah.
one a couple of weeks ago, and I think I submitted that to a number of agents last year. So I started
Yeah.
on that route and that journey, and I ended up making the decision that um, good, better, best. It is better to get something out there and begin building my career, my fan base, and my publishing resume to start this journey. I wanted to tell stories, and I wanted to tell stories to readers, and self-publishing this book was my route to do that.
Yeah. Sounds like I think that's a great thing, that you have to have the inherent core value almost of like, I want to tell stories no matter what. I want to write no matter what. And then how that eventually comes to be is, however it works is fine, but that initial drive is like, I want to tell good stories. And I think if you have that, you have a great foundation.
Yeah, I had the because I had the same. I had the funny enough the same experience as you. I gave the first 50 pages of one of my books to my wife to read.
Hmm.
I said, let me know what your feedback is. I wasn't in a place to receive feedback very well. I wasn't
Hmm.
practicing receiving feedback, and she gave me her feedback, and she was like, "This is not the right start to this book." And I just thought, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
That's the perfect start. I
You
wrote it,
get you can get
but
so defensive about it, like this is what do you mean it doesn't
yeah,
work? Yeah.
exactly. And then in my time in writing groups, getting feedback constantly
Hmm.
on making things better, you begin to understand that it is about telling the story as best you can, and the reader ultimately is right. So
Hmm.
when someone reads your work, if you want to tell stories, the measure of your success is how well a reader can understand it. It doesn't mean they're going to like it, but if
Hmm.
they understand your story, you can write it well enough for them to understand. I think that is, that is core to the craft.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, I suppose, maybe something to be said for like writing stories for yourself. And if you like them, that's great. But I agree with you. I think, if you look at any of the big, like Lord of the Rings, obviously, and then if you look at Harry Potter, like those stories are surviving for generations upon generations upon generations because of readers, not because of the authors. The author was able to tap into something that the readers, no matter how many generations of people read Lord of the Rings, it just seems like they just keep having that same experience everyone else had, and it just keeps going on. I think I agree with you. That's the measure of you found something that actually means something to someone, you know?
Yeah, like the resonance. What is the like? What is the frequency that resonates inside of your story? Right. I had a very weird experience with reviews of this book, and my future plan. So initially, when I released this book on the 14th of May, I had already had 97,000 words of the second book ready,
Hmm.
um, and I was well on my way to. I had a plan to finish it, and the feedback I got was this character, this reluctant prince who does not want the crown, is a good character and an interesting character, and people are excited to see where he goes. He
Hmm.
was not going to be in book two. But because I'm a self published author, I get to make a choice, and my choice is the generational story that I'm telling is now going to be probably about 5 generations. And so we're
Hmm.
going to see what happens with Dre's son and
Hmm.
Dre in the next book, because it piqued interest. And I think that, to your point, if something catches, you need to listen to your readers.
Yeah. I think also, famously, I think a lot of people or a lot of creators right now don't listen to their audiences enough. And I think, you can't listen to everything, of course. Like, you have to take the good and the bad from everyone's going to have an opinion about your writing and stuff. But you definitely, I mean, if a large majority of the people reading your work are shifting a certain direction, that's something to listen to at least to say, should I continue on with this character or how, um, I think of Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars actually comes to mind for the reason of, he was a huge part of that first movie. And then everyone was like, nope, we do not like this character. And then, for the next ones, he wasn't in it so much. And so it's one of those, yeah, you definitely have to pay attention to what it's like a social contract. Like, hey, I'm gonna write these books, and I'm gonna try to, I want to create the story I want to create, but also I need your feedback, and I will listen to some of that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I absolutely agree. Initially I didn't feel that way as an
Hmm.
author. I thought, well, I'm going to tell my story the way I want to tell it, and darn it, that's it. And then I've since come to the conclusion that I want to tell stories, and I want people to enjoy those stories. And sometimes their feedback can inform telling a better story. And
Hmm.
isn't that the goal? To tell a better story, to write a better story, to immerse yourself in what you do.